Okay. So, hi, Alexey. You ready?
Hey, yeah, I am. And you?
All right. I am ready. And start
Okay,
off.
let's do it.
Hello. My name is Victor Gurvich, alias Viva Victor, musician, etc. We have with us here Alexey, and help me if I'm wrong, Staroselets, Staroseletes,
Yeah,
close.
Staroselets. Yeah,
Staroselets. I should know this.
Staroselets.
But yeah. You are the director of the visual, essentially the visuals for the upcoming, or for actually technically when we record this, when it releases, it will be out already. But for the Escaping EP, also you did the cover art for it. Um, what so that's the stuff that you did with me, but overall, what kind of role do you have, or what's job title, we'll say, what's your job description?
Okay, I call myself a freelance graphic designer. I also do photography. I'm a huge typography aficionado, so I do a lot of stuff. But yeah, graphic design is the main thing.
Main thing, okay. you
And
would
also,
you
I consider myself a visual artist. I would say that.
Okay, would you call yourself a visual alchemist?
A visual what?
A visual alchemist?
Alchemist. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, that's the
okay,
word I love.
okay.
Because
Yeah,
it's all about mixing stuff together
yeah,
and seeing what happens.
yeah, that's definitely true. You saying that, I well, I was reading your bio and I was like, oh, that's good. I'll have to mention it in the interview. But it's so hard to put together bios. So sometimes you pull someone's like, that sounds good. But I do like what you've said, because that is true. There's a lot of that, like mixing things together. And I didn't think about the actual physical act of mixing things together. So yeah, that's actually really good. So we're basically here to talk about the Escaping EP, the visual components that you made. I want to talk about a little bit about your background so people can kind of know who you are, and then how you connected with InRage Entertainment, which is my label, and then of course what it was like creating the visuals for the Escaping EP. For those who don't know, that is the first official Viva Victor EP, streaming on Spotify and everywhere else that you can stream. And then it's something that I'm super proud about, because I recorded it, I produced it, I mixed it, I did all the things dealing with it. So it was a huge labor of love. But one of my favorite things has been connecting with you, Alexey, and then seeing the visuals, because it made it feel that much more real. It made it feel more like an actual thing that didn't just exist in my own space, in my own head. So that was super, super cool, super incredible. How does it feel to you to have? I mean, it's 5 songs that you put together essentially visually. How does it feel to have that coming out?
Well, I feel excited. First of all, congratulations. I know it's been a
Oh,
big
thank you.
work, and you definitely put a lot of energy and efforts into it. Doing a lot of stuff, and you, working with you is always a great experience. It's always a wonderful journey. So I just feel excited. So
Yeah,
let's jump into it.
yeah. So best place to start is your origins, your humble beginnings, so to speak. Where are you from? Where'd you grow up? What's that start of your life like?
Okay, so I was born in St. Petersburg. It's in Russia. The second largest city in Russia. And actually, my first 6 years of my life I spent in the Soviet Union because I was born in the Soviet Union. So it's a fun fact that I
I
like to, sometimes reflect upon.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
I
yeah. What's your
yeah,
question?
I guess I don't remember if we talked about it before, but I forgot that you're actually born in St. Petersburg, which is where my family is from. My mom was born there, my dad as well. My brother was
Oh,
born there. And then because my parents were immigrating from the Soviet Union, my mom was pregnant with me, so they stopped in Italy, pushed me out, then to the U.S. I was like barely, barely a year
Whoa.
old. So yeah, I didn't realize that straight from St. Petersburg. That's wild. Okay, wow. Okay, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so yeah, it's also it's great to know that. I didn't know that you have some ancestry
yeah,
from St. Petersburg. So now I feel like we're more connected than
yeah.
ever.
I knew there'd be some, but
And
yeah, well,
my childhood was quite common for those times, despite of the chaos that was caused by the collapsing regime. But I was lucky to get into this, new educational system without, which didn't include the state ideology in that range, at least.
okay.
So yeah, I was one of those, a representative of this new generation of New Russia. So I studied music. I played piano,
Oh
actually.
wow, okay.
Yeah, I'm gifted by, this musical talent, so it's kind of my burden.
Yeah. Do you still
And I
play?
spent not that much because I don't have a keyboard, first of
Okay.
all, and it's a huge thing, hard
Yeah.
to take it everywhere. So well, sometimes I do some fun stuff, with in Ableton,
Yeah.
just playing around with sounds. But it's I don't even consider it a hobby. It's just more kind of
Yeah.
meditation.
For the joy of it, right?
Yeah, for the
Yeah.
joy, completely,
Yeah.
completely for the joy. I was just, absorbing everything that happened around, and the Iron Curtain was falling, the Berlin Wall was breaking apart,
Wow. Yeah.
and the my world was just floating with new stuff, with new books, magazines, computers, devices, and of course music. So I enjoyed that time, because I
Was there?
think everyone enjoys their childhood at some
Yeah.
point.
Yeah. There's always those
So
moments where I think the early kind of wonder and excitement of there's something new. There's this thing that's happening. With those things that were coming to you, I know obviously there's art, there was music in Russia, there's film, all those kinds of things, especially St. Petersburg, you can go to the Winter's Palace, just the Hermitage, just art everywhere. And St. Petersburg is a couple times I've been able to visit, beautiful city, really, really beautiful city. Is there a point where obviously you were studying piano, but is there a point where you started to really become attracted to visual design or working in the visual medium?
well, yeah, actually it was connected to my passion for music
Hmm.
as well. My father had a not very big, but still very diverse collection of vinyls with different music from all over the world. And when I was little, like 4 or 5, 6 years old, I was, listening to all that music, and we didn't have internet. We
Yeah,
couldn't be distracted from by smartphones. So all you could do is, sitting with your headphones
yeah,
and gazing at the album art, at the
yeah,
sleeve. So that's what I did, and I was listening to music and, investigating every inch of this thing, and trying to understand what the hell it is. Because
yeah,
before that, I only listened to music, on cassette tapes, and I
yeah,
didn't have any album covers. It was just, some recordings passed from someone else. But then I had this experience of holding the
yeah.
material thing in
And
my
it's
hand,
impressive
in my
too, like
hands.
they're this big. Like I grew up with cassettes as well,
Yeah.
so they're like, this big. The art's kind of small, and then CDs, the booklets are only this big, but with records, they're like, it's that big. Were
Yeah,
there
it's like a
any
painting.
Yeah. What are there a couple that like stuck out to you as like this is I could listen and look at this thing for however long, the hours that it takes to
Yeah,
listen.
probably the most influential for me was Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band by the Beatles, because
Yeah.
it's a conceptual album, and the album cover and the sleeve design is also very conceptual, and it
Hmm.
has a lot of layers of information, layers of hidden messages, and different interesting little stuff hidden
Yeah.
inside. So I was fascinated by that idea that you can literally pack the music
Yeah.
into something material, and it also communicates with you. So you're
Yeah.
not just listening, you're revealing some new layers of information, and it's an add up to the musical piece.
Yeah.
So
Sergeant Pepper's
yeah,
is a
that was yeah.
it's a good one. It's visually impressive, especially because it has all that kind of copy paste. It has this paper sense to it, but it's flat, but it has that physical sense. I thinking about you did Zordon of Doom's Confuzzlement
Yeah.
EP, right? I can you saying that, I can see that. I can see that kind of like a parallel there. I feel like I can at least. But so you
It's
were
interesting.
yeah, because there's that kind of paste quality too, paper paste and on top of each other. And I haven't looked at that Sgt. Pepper's album in a while, but I know there's that element of like, here's this figure, here's this, and we're gonna put this here, and it's kind of almost cut out in some parts of it. When did you move out or leave Russia?
Well, it was in 2018 when I took a step forward in my education and
Mhm.
decided to go to UCLA Extension class for Design Communication Arts certificate.
Okay.
So that's when I moved to the United States, Los Angeles, and I spent there a wonderful 3 years
3 years. Okay. Well,
until COVID started, and I had to return back for a short recap.
yeah.
At least
So
that's what I thought it's gonna be.
yeah. Where you so you moved to LA for the UCLA extension program 2018.
Yeah.
You were already working on doing some kind of film projects, and were you also doing working on music covers as well, or cover art, etc. During that period before you went to UCLA?
Well, actually, my career was very diverse. I tried myself in different parts, in different endeavors. I tried entrepreneurship. I
Mm,
did management. My major degree is in management. So
okay.
I never thought in the beginning of my life, I never thought that I'm going to be like a real graphic designer. It
Yeah.
was just something that I always loved, and I always allowed myself to try different things, and it was my passion for life, and it still is. But finally, I realized that that's what I want to do. So
Yeah.
I worked in advertising. I worked in corporate branding, some boring stuff. But
Still that kind of
I
tied
always,
to graphic design or
yeah,
working in that. Yeah.
pretty much. So the more as I did graphic design, as much as I did it, the more I did it, the more I realized that's my thing, and
Yeah.
it's just inevitable. So I started working with musicians pretty early. I guess my first album cover was made in 2003.
Okay.
It was some indie band where my friend played bass. So he asked me like, can you do album cover? I said, well, yeah, why not? Of course. So I did it, and that was the first big milestone
Yeah.
in my career. And I really liked it, and I wanted to continue this experience with other musicians.
Yeah. So you're
So
you're doing
that's
you
how it started.
yeah, you start you have this kind of tie early where it's always been an interest, and then 2003 you kind of get into it partially because a friend says I need help, and you're like, yeah, sure, let me do this, and that kind of continues on and builds to, I guess, an epiphany of some sort where you're like, I got to go to LA because that's where you got to go if you want to kind of dive into those kinds of things. And just for a brief, because UCLA, it's probably around that time where you got connected to InRage Entertainment. I know they're working with various places, but uh, tell me a little bit about, because you were mentioning at the beginning too, and I wanted to bring this up, the uh, the calligraphy and the typography part of things. How did that happen? Because that is very specific. Fonts are really cool. I bought a calligraphy set when I was really young. I never did it, and my handwriting is still terrible. But that kind of the beauty of lines and doing those kind of things is really cool. How did you get into that?
Yeah, thank you. It's a very good question. And first of all, I want to say that calligraphy has nothing to do with your handwriting. You
Yeah.
can do calligraphy, it can be beautiful, but your handwriting still will be terrible, just as mine. So just don't worry about that. I think it's just it's the different parts of brain that
Mm,
are involved into these
right.
things. Calligraphy is more like drawing, maybe.
Right.
It's not so automated, while it's still it includes some automated processes, but it's just different. And that's what's beautiful about calligraphy, because first of all, it helps you, to evolve some parts of your brain that were not previously as active as before.
Yeah.
So that's one side. It's like purely art. And the other side is I was always interested in symbols, in glyphs,
Hmm.
in small pieces of graphic that can communicate, like, say, any letter is just, a small thing, like letter
Yeah.
O, but it contains a sound, it contains a meaning, like in
Yeah.
hieroglyphs, for instance. And it always fascinated me. So I started my own research about letters. What letter is? Where did it come from? How did we get to an idea of inventing a letter?
Yeah.
And how do we communicate through letters? And that's how I ended up with the roots, which is calligraphy, because
Yeah.
that's how it started. We first we drew letters, then we just invented the way to print it. And I just wanted to understand how it works on the physical level, like
Yeah.
what our letters consist of. And to me, typography is a big part of my method,
Yeah.
my graphic, because it's hard to imagine a world without letters, without
Yeah.
words. So it's a part of communication, and you need to be able to choose a proper typeface to communicate in a proper way.
Yeah. Especially, if you talk about, working on in a marketing side, the whether it's the company name or the product name or something like that, it's gotta look good. Same thing with, album covers. There has to be so many more specific choices of how that lettering looks. Because if it's just, Comic Sans, I mean, no one's
Yeah,
gonna
exactly. And
do that.
it's not just about being looking good. It's about appropriate context,
Yeah.
because you won't want Comic Sans on a gravestone, right?
Yeah,
So,
that
well,
that
maybe
would,
you will, but
you want to go against the
only if
break the
you are
mold.
very, yeah. Yeah. So it's all about understanding of uh, how it will fit the context.
Okay.
It's not about, and not about just the shape, but about the a bigger thing behind.
Yeah. So that's awesome. I know that you were doing some work on that, on obviously on the many things you're working on, but also still kind of pursuing the typography, calligraphy during UCLA as well. But it was during that UCLA time period where you connected with InRage. How did that happen?
Yeah, well, as you mentioned, during my classes, I had this internship class, and I decided to take the opportunity and, get an internship somewhere in a related field. Of course, I was really eager to get into, some music or film
Hmm.
industry, and I applied to different companies, different agencies, and I got back. I got a reply from InRage, and it happened that I got there.
Yeah.
uh,
So
so it just happened.
yeah,
It was
and
inevitable.
that's crazy because I was in LA at the time, and I was mostly going out on trying to find acting jobs because I always loved music. I was actually actively writing a lot, but I was never really considered recording anything or working that way. And I, by chance, because they posted something on Backstage, I submitted an audition. I was like, nothing's gonna happen with this, and then something did happen. So yeah, chance is such a wild thing
A chance.
in life.
Exactly.
You've mostly worked a lot with creating single cover arts and EP album cover arts with them,
Yeah,
right?
that's
Yeah.
right.
Is there what's kind of that process like usually? Because I know there's all kinds of communication of ideas. Do you usually hear the song? How often are you given like free reign, or how often is it someone's like, this is exactly what I want?
Well, if possible, I always prefer to listen to the song
Hmm.
beforehand because it helps me to get into the mood, to catch this, what I call the essence of the song,
Right.
some uh the emotional layer,
Yeah.
the principle, the
Yeah.
idea. So it helps me because I consider like I don't think that I'm creating something just out of nowhere. It's
Right.
always about first you connect to the field of the composition of the track, and then you start getting these ideas and images, and then you translate them into visual forms.
Yeah.
So yeah, the process is, listening and interpreting.
Right. Yeah. I imagine it's got to be hard to come up with what the art is or what the thing could be without knowing what the full story is. That'd be like working with your one hand tied behind your back, your eyes closed. You've worked with like a number of uh arts, a number of arts, number of album arts. I think you've worked with Autumn Simone, Zordon of Doom, Serena, Dorian, I think Prism Club. Was there any one of
Yep.
them that particularly that you was among your favorite? Just like I feel like I did a really good job on that one.
Well, it's like asking a parent which kid is
Yeah,
their favorite.
you've got to choose
uh,
one,
just one.
just
That's
one,
not
maybe two,
fair.
maybe two.
I love all of them,
Yeah,
and I'm the more I work with InRage, the more proud I get for each
yeah,
one of them because I see all these artists evolving. I see them, doing so much work and putting so much passion and energy into their work that I just, I'm happy for them and I
yeah,
can contribute to this process. So it's very hard to say which one is, I'm mostly proud of. But you mentioned Zordon of Doom and
hmm
her single "Absolute Confuzzlement."
hmm
It was actually a remarkable experience because um, I like this atmosphere in InRage where they have this unique feeling of freedom, of creative freedom,
yeah,
but it's still, in some um, um, I can say frames, but it's controlled, of course.
yeah, yeah,
But you are allowed to express yourself. So with Zordon, I just, I thought, okay, they don't give me any restraints. They're not
Right.
asking me for something special. So why not allow myself to, you know, just to do something from heart? And
Yeah.
I listened to the songs, and I really like them. It still plays in my head all the time.
Yeah. She
So
writes such catchy
yeah, and I
songs. She sounds so good. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And well, I thought, well, that could be a little bit, you know, over confuzzled, but they said, okay, we like it. That's cool. And
Yeah.
I thought, okay, great. I like these guys. They know what they do.
Yeah. It is interesting because like sometimes if you do, like you were saying earlier, you have to figure out how to essentially tell the story of what's happening. And sometimes if you do like that kind of half measure of what the story is, you get a sense of it, but it's not as impactful. So sometimes it makes so much sense to go all the way. Confuzzlement, go all give as much of it as possible because that's what the feeling is.
Yeah, because if you even listen to this song, it's so, you know, so intense, so
Yeah.
crazy, and I just got this feeling, and I wanted to reflect it in visual graphics. So I did it, and it worked. And
Yeah.
to me, was, you know, this experience which I would say bonded me with enragers and
Yeah.
established this truthful relationships, you know,
Yeah.
where we can trust each other. That's the main thing.
Yeah.
That's the big thing.
So finally, we're gonna talk about. Oh, I skipped one. I skipped one of my cards. We're gonna talk about escaping. The EP, the visual components of it, which, as we've been kind of talking about, essentially the way that something I always come back to is because there's so many terms of talking about how are you going to do this and trying to figure out how to reach out to connect with an audience, and people talk about branding, blah blah blah, but it comes to me whenever I think about it, it's all about telling the story, like what's the story of the thing. And so it's continuing telling the story and adding on to whatever that mood, that feeling is. um which the visuals, they got exactly what I wanted. So I know you worked with on album arts, credits with for film, documentaries, etc. Was this the first time doing a visualizers in this kind of capacity?
Well, actually, yes. I never did motion videos for music before, though I always thought of that. You know,
Yeah.
maybe someday I will try, but it never happened. But it finally happened with you.
Yeah.
So I think again it was inevitable.
Yeah.
But I didn't. I wasn't intended, you know, to do it like I did.
Yeah.
So yeah, well, that was my first experience, and I'm very satisfied with it.
Yeah. It's interesting too because we had worked on the Omens, which is on EP, but it was also a single initially last year. And I had taken a picture and I didn't know what to do with it. I was like, this is a thing, but something else needs to happen to it. So, send it to InRage. And then you actually worked on that and creating the kind of mood and the look of the actual thing, the rest of the texture, etc. um how did it feel to kind of like come back to see the song again, obviously, but then there's additional music and additional things to do? Did it feel like going back to old work, or how was that? Like, I've worked on this before, but now there's this other element to doing something on something that I've worked on before.
Well, I never thought of it like that, because you know, when you're working on a single, it's something different from an EP.
Yeah.
And in EP, there's a story, there's some kind of concept behind it. And I must admit that this time Omens sounded completely different to me in the context.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you know, I was listening to it. I knew the melody, I knew the lyrics, but it was just different song.
Right. It felt
And
new inside.
yeah, yeah, and I reimagined the whole like I got the completely different impressions from it,
Right.
and I really liked it because it's like something new opened to me, something that I didn't see before,
Yeah.
and I enjoyed this moment. I enjoyed that feeling, and I just wanted to go deeper
Yeah.
into it.
Yeah. That's super interesting. I would have never thought of it feeling like as a totally different kind of like a new experience. But yeah, that's crazy. My first EP, your first visualizers. You ready to work on a whole album?
Sure, why not?
One day. Well, I will get there. um to give a little bit of history of it, because this thing has kind of essentially existed in a lot of different formats before you actually received it. Initially, the crazy person that I am, I was like, I'm gonna do everything. I'm gonna create a whole thing. I was learning Blender, and like I'm gonna figure out how to do these things, which I did learn a fair amount. Was it enough to actually make a whole album of things, etc.? Definitely, definitely not. So there was this big grand concept with a lot of different stuff that I worked out. And then I had to kind of, while I was working on everything, I had to rethink everything and kind of figure out how to tell the story better, because there's lots of ideas and sometimes that can kind of get in the way versus give the experience. So I had to kind of cut a lot of things and try to condense it to, what I wanted the feeling to be like. And then eventually I did this write up, which was which got closer to the heart of, I think, what was happening. And I did this big write up, and I did use Blender and created these very rough, very rough reference images, and then sent it to InRage. Said, I can't do this. How can this be done? And then essentially it landed in your lap. I think they were looking at somebody. They're looking at somebody else who's more like of not cartoon, but more like pen pencil art. And I was like, that's not the right kind of feeling. And so they're like, you know what? They're like, Alexey can do this. We know he can. And so they sent it to you. And then that's when, shortly after that, I think they were telling me, after you reviewed it and you kind of told them their concept, I was talking to Ebony and she was like, well, he's going on a specific thing, so be ready for something different than what you said. And I was like, oh my gosh, what's it going to be? And then, we had our meeting and you gave me the lowdown. I was like, this could be actually like work really, really well. Cause it was like, it took that another step of condensing everything, which I was worried or scared about. But at the same time, it also made things crystallize down even more to like the heart of the whole experience. Yeah, so that's kind of the history behind it. And we get to Alexey.